Welcome back to the Real Estate 401k Show. I'm your host, Mike Weinstein, alongside Justin Frederick and Ryan Gertis down at the end. You're going to want to text the word RIGHT to 623-AZ-RECON. That's RIGHT to 623-AZ-RECON. All right, gents, we've been talking about it for, weeks or months. I don't even know. Talking to sellers. Sellers are struggling a little bit. Houses are sitting on the market longer than they would like. They're taking less than what they would like, and we've just been saying that you gotta have the house ready. It's gotta look good. It's gotta be one of the nicest looking and the cleanest ones on the block, and it's gotta be priced right. You from the get-go, when that gate opens, it's gotta be priced right. Otherwise, it's going to sit. So we came across an article, the housing markets where homes are selling below the asking price, and Phoenix is in that list. And I found this really, really interesting because we're seeing it. So we're seeing inventory drop a little bit because listings are expiring and homes are going off the market. But nearly a third of listings last month had a price reduction. Ryan, I think price reductions can be very, very dangerous. It sends the wrong message to a buyer when they're working with someone who knows how to negotiate. But but the more you have to drop the price, the longer it stays on the market.
So price reductions, I mean, I agree and I disagree, man. It's when they go over there and reduce it by like $5,000, $3,000, some minimal price reduction. They're doing it just so that it pops back up on their algorithms, because everybody that's out there looking for a home, the first place that they look for homes is on their cell phone or on their laptop. They're going to Realtor.com, they're going to Zillow, they're going to all these other different platforms. And whenever a seller decreases their prices, then it automatically pushes it up because they want more exposure, because these are aggregators, meaning they want to get your information and they want to sell it to other real estate agents so that they can ascertain your business, which that's a completely different topic. But the moral of the story is, when it comes to price reductions, if you're doing a price reduction that's just minimal, then okay, you might get the viewership increase for that quick little week or so, but they're going to look at that as a sign of weakness. Now, it's the sellers that say, hey, you know what, like, all right, my bad. I went in there and had too high expectation out of the market. I'm going to do a drastic price cut and I'm going to get it to where it needs to be. At that point, they're reaching a whole new pool of buyers. And so buyers that go in there and see that a seller just reduced by $25,000, $30,000 or more, then they should expect that their competition is going to increase, not just by the number, but by the actual quality of consumers. It's going to be a different pool. So, I mean, depending on the type of price point, like if we're talking $1 million, then a $5,000 price cut is nothing. But when it goes from $1 million down to 900,000, I mean, there's a lot more people that qualify for a $900,000 property than they do for $1 million, and so you're going to have quite a bit more competition. So I think they're good if they're used correctly, but the best thing to do is to come to market at $900,000 if you have a $900,000 property. Period. End of story. So think about a seller's market. What did we do to prepare our sellers in order to bring their home to market? We brought a CMA, right? We went and we looked up what the value of the comparable properties in the neighborhood were selling for, what they were closing for. Why? Because we knew that we would have appraisal issues. And so we needed to hit those numbers. And it's like, okay, we might be able to squeak $1 million out of this one, based off of this comp and this comp. But these other ones, they closed 6-8 months ago, and the market has matured quite a bit. That was 2020, 21. Now, I'm looking at closed sales a lot less. I'm not going to have appraisal issues. There's not very many homes that are going $20,000, $30,000 above what the comparables are going for. They're just not.
Right.
I'm looking directly at the active stuff, or maybe the ones that just recently went pending or under contract accepting backups. And then what I'm doing is I'm literally taking the sellers over to those active listings. Let's put our boots on the ground. Actually go inside of these homes and see what our competition is doing, because all of those are going to appraise, but we might have 5, 6 comps or homes that are similar that we know if they have $1 million and they're walking around, they're going to be walking into each and every single one of those.
Right.
And so if we are going to be priced as high or higher, we need to have some pretty serious justification. And even then, we still might be striking out. So it's just a reverse engineering of what we used to have to do when we were dealing with the seller's market.
Yeah, and I think for me, Justin, and I agree with you, Ryan. When you have to do a price reduction, there is definitely a strategy to it. My point is, you don't want to be in a situation where you are having to do price reductions, where you're having to now, I got to reduce the price of the home of what it's really worth. I should have listened to my agent, okay, instead of shooting for the moon, just wishing. Those days we're not in those days. But Justin, when I'm going out showing a $1.2 million house, and the prospective buyer goes, well, it was originally listed at 1.3, so they've already dropped it $100,000. In their mind, they're like, well, you know what? When we go to make an offer, we're gonna go $100,000 less.
That's what I feel
less.
when I see a large price reduction. I'm like, those are the ones that they're desperate. We need to go after it. I agree.
But to Ryan's point,
Yeah, you
even
just gotta
they
list
may
it
have come
right.
to their senses and they corrected where it is.
But I think they've
the
already
buyer
hurt
doesn't-
themselves
But
at
the
that
buyer
point.
doesn't know that. The
Right.
buyer just sees desperation.
There's no question that price reductions, they weaken your position on the negotiation table.
100%.
But if you're going to do it, don't do 8 different price reductions at $3,000 or $4,000 dollars at a time.
Now, as a buyer's agent, though, if you're walking in, you see a $30,000 price reduction, immediately you smell blood, and you're going in for the attack. You're not going in like, okay, we're going to negotiate lightly here. We're not treading water.
not.
We're going deep. We're going deep after this, and we're fighting because they got money to spend, obviously. And that's just my opinion when I look at it. But I agree with both of you. I feel like now more than ever, these sellers have to have a realistic expectation and understanding of what the market is before going in with a listing. That's why, guys, I love that you guys do the coming soon to feel out the market, because that's a brilliant move right there. So you're not doing those price reductions because you can change that price when it's active. But I just feel like any price reduction right now, not any, but anything, I'd say 20,000 and above, it's just there's blood in the water at that point, and you guys are going after it. I've yet to see you guys like give a full price offer with somebody that's done a price reduction on their house.
Well, we're not writing full price offers on anything.
Ever,
right now.
right. But you guys, I can smell I can feel your guys' excitement when there's a price reduction. You guys say it out loud. There was a price reduction on this one. We're going.
There's a lot of downward pressure, and
there's a lot of downward pressure.
There's definitely an element of timing. A lot of times right now, even we'll submit an offer and then they'll either reject it or they'll come back with a crazy counter, and then we've seen it a couple of weeks later. They say, okay,
Yeah.
we're
ready to go.
Yeah, we're ready. Like, let's.
Can we have that offer back
We're
again?
a little bit
Well,
more
you
flexible.
will get another offer. It just won't be the same now.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
the problem.
Yeah.
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 All right, if you are looking at or thinking about selling your home, pricing it right is imperative, and who you hire to help you price that home is critical. And we'd love to have that conversation with you, discuss some of our strategies and how we come to market with homes. All you got to do is text the word RIGHT to 623-AZ-RECON. That's RIGHT to 623-AZ-RECON, or just type the word RIGHT in the comment section.
Now, how do you want them to spell that?
Anyway, it doesn't really
Okay,
matter. I
all
don't,
right.
I don't even know how.
RITE.
Yeah. RITE. Perfect. Yeah. So right now, Ryan, we don't talk as much as people would think about our own strategies. We go out and we do our own thing, but we're pretty much on the same page.
Sure.
But right now, the 4 things that I'm looking for is I'm looking for the days on market. The longer the house has been on the market, the more desperate I'm assuming that the seller is. I am looking for those price reductions. I am looking to see whether it potentially was under contract and then fell out of escrow, which makes the seller even more desperate. But the other thing that I'm looking for and that I love, because is the equity position. But if we're going to make an offer on a $1.3 million house and we've seen a $100,000 price reduction, so now that we're at 1.2 million, and it's been on the market 150 days, but they bought the home 15 years ago for $500,000. That psyche of this is almost like monopoly money, because to me I have to take that into account. Do they have room to give? Because most sellers, even in this market, do not want to have to come to the closing table cutting a check.
Of course. I do look at the history as well, because if they've done any other previous, price reductions, because we'll see numerous in there, or if it's ever gone under contract before. I want to know why it fell out. Those are a couple of questions I'll usually have for the listing agent. I'm also looking for if they refinanced between 3 and 5 years ago, maybe 2 to 5 years ago. And then again, like you said, their equity position, because if there's a creative move to be made there, then we could potentially go over there, not only get it for a good deal, but then, go over there and see if the seller will carry at their 3% interest rate or 2.75% interest rate and get a little creative with that. So, I'm surprised I haven't seen more of it. I know that a lot of it's happening. We've done a little bit of it. But it seems like the majority of the stuff that we're doing is traditional financing, cash. We're doing a lot of cash. And then new home builds, they're playing their forward commitments game. So that seems to be the primary stuff that we're seeing.
I mean, it's just hard as a seller to do a carryback at, let's just even say 4.5%, when you see the stock market doing well. In most cases, depending on what your options are and what you're picking, and then there's other opportunities out there for higher interest rates. So I see why they're not doing it, because there's, even with a carry, there's a little risk there, and I want to be rewarded for my risk. So I get it, and you're putting, sometimes there's a few $100,000 involved in that, I, on my side of things, obviously, I wish there was more seller carries on, like, even second mortgages. We've seen that. We've seen it. But it doesn't happen often enough. There's just not enough, money or stake in the game,
Yeah, and I think, it kind of has to be a perfect storm, because if the seller stands to walk with $200,000, your buyer needs to be that cash heavy in order to make them whole at the closing table, because there's not a whole lot of seconds out there that will do either, especially if it's a small loan. Like, most minimums are 50.
50,000, on loan amounts, yeah. But even on like your second mortgages, you're tied up at basically 90% combined loan to value.
Sure.
Well, so let me ask you this, Justin, and Ryan, you may know the answer. The risk associated with doing some sort of seller carryback when there's an existing loan in first place is that there is oftentimes a change in title, and if that first loan catches wind of it, depending on how the documents are written, but most of them, they can call the note due and say, hey, there's a $350,000 loan. You now got 30 days to satisfy that. Do seconds have that ability to do that?
Same thing on those notes. I mean, the title of the home needs to be held in the owner's or in the mortgagee's names, because the liability is carried with them, right? So they want to make sure that they're occupying the residence and they have skin in the game, and they're basically tied to that house. If they're not tied to that house, then if they already have another house, the risk is higher, right? So they definitely they don't like that. They don't like that at all.
I think the moral of the story, though, is there's no real policing for it. I mean, there's
really none.
but they're just not doing. All the mortgage company really cares about is, are they getting?
Is the payment coming in, right?
Yeah, but I think sellers just need to understand that there is that risk.
Of course, yeah, and the sellers they're going to continue to be on the note, right? So their credit is still going to be impacted, and so if something goes sideways, if they don't have some extra cash in the bank, then and the buyer goes sideways on it, then even if they have all their systems in place to go foreclose on them, there's still going to be a period of time that there's going to be a redemption period, and they could be stuck, paying that note for however long it takes to get through that process, and then resell the home and either do it again or do a traditional sale and get the loan paid off.
I've been surprised that there's not more hard money lenders doing second mortgages. Just okay, I'll give you the loan at 15% to purchase this property and assume a 3% first
tell you why.
mortgage.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a second mortgage in the state of Arizona. I get that, but if they left equity in the home, and that's why a lot of these seconds won't go higher than 90%.
Well, hard money lenders, they're not going to lend to primaries.
True.
They're
They're
only
looking
gonna
for investments,
Yeah, they're
short-term loans.
Right.
Yeah, yep. They don't want their money tied up.
because bankruptcy law will allow someone to depending on
Basically,
how they live
gone.
there for free for
Yeah.
5 years, so they're not interested in that game.
Yeah.
All right, well, there you have it. If you are a seller thinking about putting your house on the market and looking for creative strategies and effective strategies to get your house sold in the quickest amount of time for the most amount of money, would love to have that conversation with you. All you got to do is text the word RIGHT to 623-AZ-RECON. That's RIGHT to 623-AZ-RECON, or just type the word RIGHT in the comment section.